The unexpected assignmenter. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the transport shuttle's viewport, watching the massive research station grow larger against the star-filled darkness. Harmony Point looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, its 6 arms extending from a central hub where dozens of different alien and human ships docked daily. After 3 years of studying alien psychology from Earth universities, he was finally getting hands-on experience at the galaxy's most advanced interspecies research facility. The shuttle's pilot, a cheerful human woman named Captain Torres, glanced back at him. "First time at Harmony Point, Doc." "Yes," Marcus replied, adjusting his glasses nervously. 6 months studying Thylorian behavioral patterns and psychological frameworks. I've read everything about them, but I've never actually met one in person. Captain Torres chuckled. "Thylorians are interesting folks, tall, elegant, very logical. They look like living crystals when the light hits their skin just right. You'll probably love working with them. They're as curious about us as we are about them." 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in the station's central hub, his single duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The place buzzed with activity as beings from a dozen different worlds moved through the corridors. The air recycling system created a gentle hum that seemed to vibrate through the metal floors, and the artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth normal. The housing assignment office was a small space where a tired-looking human clerk barely looked up from his holographic display. "Chen, Marcus, human male, age 28, xenobiologist." The clerk read, "You're in residential block C, room 847. Your roommate assignment is Research Commander Zara Veltais, Thylorian Military Science Division." Marcus blinked. "Roommate, I thought I was getting private quarters." "Budget cuts," the clerk said with a shrug. "Interspecies housing program. The idea is that living together builds better understanding between our peoples. Here's your access card. Try not to cause any diplomatic incidents." The walk to residential block C gave Marcus time to panic quietly. All his research had been theoretical: lab studies, behavioral analysis, psychological profiles derived from interviews and observations. He'd never actually lived with an alien before, let alone slept in the same room as one. What if he did something offensive by accident? What if their biology was incompatible? What if she found humans disgusting? Room 847 was larger than he'd expected, with 2 sleeping alcoves separated by a central living area equipped with a desk, 2 chairs, and a small food preparation unit. The walls were a soft gray color that shifted slightly in the artificial light, and a large viewport showed the stars slowly rotating as the station turned. What immediately caught his attention was the figure standing with her back to him near the viewport. She was tall, at least 6.5 feet, with pale skin that seemed to have a subtle translucent quality. Her long hair was white with faint blue highlights, pulled back in an intricate braided pattern that looked both practical and elegant. She wore a simple gray uniform that managed to look somehow regal on her frame. When she turned around, Marcus felt his breath catch. Her face was humanoid but undeniably alien, with high cheekbones and features that seemed carved from fine marble. Her eyes were the most striking feature, large and luminous, a pale blue color that seemed to shift between silver and ice depending on the light. When she looked at him, he felt like she was seeing right through him. "You are Dr. Marcus Chen," she said. It wasn't a question, and her voice had a musical quality, with precise pronunciation that made every word sound deliberate. "I am Research Commander Zara Veltais. I have reviewed your academic credentials. Your work on interspecies psychological adaptation theory is adequate." "Thank you," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure if that had been a compliment. "I've studied Thylorian culture and psychology extensively, but I have to admit, this is my first time actually meeting someone from your world." Zara tilted her head slightly, studying him with those pale eyes. "Your species is smaller than I expected. The average human male height was listed as 175 centimeters in our databases, but you appear to be approximately 168 centimeters. Are you considered short among your people?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I'm a little below average, yes, but height doesn't really affect my research capabilities." "Of course not," Zara said matter-of-factly. "Physical stature has no correlation with intellectual capacity. I was merely noting the discrepancy between expected and observed data. Your sleeping alcove is on the left. I have prepared a schedule for our cohabitation to minimize potential conflicts arising from our different biological and cultural requirements." She gestured to a tablet on the desk, which displayed what looked like an incredibly detailed schedule broken down into 15-minute increments. I have accounted for differences in our sleep cycles, nutritional needs, personal hygiene requirements, and work schedules. I have also researched human customs regarding shared living spaces, and have endeavored to accommodate your species' apparent need for what you call personal space. Marcus stared at the schedule. It looked like something a military logistics officer might create for coordinating troop movements. This is very thorough, but maybe we could just, figure things out as we go. Play it by ear. Zara's pale eyes widened slightly. Play it by ear. I do not understand this expression. Are you suggesting we make decisions based on auditory input rather than logical planning? It's just a saying, Marcus explained quickly. It means being flexible, adapting to situations as they develop rather than planning everything in advance. Ah, Zara nodded. Improvisation. This is a very human concept. My people prefer structure and predictability, however. I acknowledge that interspecies cooperation may require some degree of flexibility. The first few days passed awkwardly but peacefully. They followed Zara's schedule loosely, with Marcus making small suggestions that she would consider carefully before accepting or politely declining. She was remarkably neat and organized, her few possessions arranged with military precision. Her work materials were exotic to his eyes: crystalline data storage devices, some kind of meditation pad made from materials he couldn't identify, and several books written in flowing Thylorian script. Marcus learned that Zara was studying human emotional responses to stress and uncertainty, while he was researching Thylorian social structures and their effects on individual psychology. Their work complemented each other in interesting ways, and they began having long discussions over shared meals about their respective findings. Your species is remarkably adaptable, Zara observed one evening as they sat across from each other at the small table. Humans seem to thrive in uncertain situations, while my people prefer predictable environments. This suggests different evolutionary pressures shaped our psychological development. That's what fascinates me about Thylorian culture, Marcus replied. Your society values order and logic so highly, but you've still managed to become incredibly innovative. That's not an easy balance to achieve. Zara was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words. You speak of balance. This is something I have been thinking about since arriving at this station. Living among different species requires constant adaptation, constant balancing between one's own nature and the needs of others. That night, Marcus was awakened by sounds from Zara's sleeping alcove, soft movements, restless shifting, and what sounded like quiet distress. He lay still, unsure whether he should check on her or respect her privacy. The sounds continued for over an hour before finally stopping. The next morning, Zara appeared tired despite her usual composed demeanor. Her skin seemed less luminous than usual, and there were subtle signs of fatigue around her eyes. Are you feeling all right? Marcus asked as they prepared their morning meals. I am functioning within acceptable parameters, Zara replied, but her voice lacked its usual strength. You seemed restless last night. I hope I didn't disturb your sleep somehow. Zara paused in her food preparation, her back still turned to him. The disturbance was not caused by your presence. I am experiencing some difficulty with my rest cycles since arriving at this station. Is there anything I can do to help? Maybe adjust the lighting or temperature. She turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain. The environmental conditions are not the issue. My people have certain requirements for proper rest that are difficult to fulfill in this environment. Marcus waited, sensing that she wanted to explain, but was struggling with how to do it. Thylorians evolved on a world where survival required close cooperation. She continued finally. Our rest cycles are regulated by what humans might call comfort bonding, physical contact that regulates stress hormones and promotes mental stability. When we sleep alone, our systems remain partially alert, preventing truly restorative rest. So you need someone else present to sleep properly? Not merely present. Physical contact is required. Among my people, this is as natural as breathing. But here, among humans, such requirements are potentially problematic. Marcus began to understand. You've been sleeping poorly because you're alone, correct? I have been attempting to adapt, but the lack of proper rest is beginning to affect my cognitive performance. I may need to request reassignment to quarters with other Thylorians, though this would likely end our research collaboration. Marcus found himself speaking before he'd fully thought through what he was saying. What if I helped? Zara stared at him. I do not understand. I mean, What if I provided the physical contact you need for sleep? If it's just a biological requirement, like adjusting the temperature or the lighting, then it's just part of making our shared living arrangement work. You would be willing to engage in comfort bonding with me? Sarah's voice was carefully neutral, but Marcus could see surprise in her pale eyes. If it helps you sleep and keeps us working together. Yes, assuming it's not uncomfortable for you to do that with a human. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Humans are smaller and warmer than Thylorians. Your body temperature and size would actually be ideal for comfort bonding. But are you certain this would not cause you distress? Humans have complex emotional associations with physical contact. I'm sure I can handle it, Marcus said, though he was actually far from certain. We're scientists, right? This is just solving a biological compatibility problem. That evening, after they'd both completed their work and prepared for sleep, Marcus found himself standing uncertainly in the central living area. Sarah emerged from her alcove wearing sleeping clothes, a simple, soft-looking garment that covered her from neck to ankles. The optimal configuration, she said with her usual directness, would be for you to lie on your side while I position myself behind you, with my arms around your torso. This provides the necessary physical contact while allowing both of us to rest comfortably. Marcus nodded, trying to treat this like any other scientific procedure. He settled onto Sarah's sleeping pad, which was larger and more comfortable than his own human standard bed. The material seemed to adjust to his body temperature and weight automatically. A moment later, he felt Sarah settle behind him. She was much larger than he was, and when her arms came around him, he felt completely enveloped. Her skin was cooler than human skin, but remarkably soft, and he could feel the subtle luminescence that he'd noticed before, a gentle warmth that seemed to emanate from within. Is this acceptable? She asked softly, her voice close to his ear. Yes, Marcus managed to say, though his heart was beating faster than usual. Are you comfortable? More than I have been since arriving at this station, Sarah replied. Your size and warmth are very soothing. I can feel my stress levels decreasing already. They lay in comfortable silence for several minutes. Marcus gradually relaxed as he realized that this was indeed just a biological necessity, no different from adjusting the air circulation or the lighting. Sarah's breathing became slow and regular, and he could feel tension leaving her body as her systems began to truly rest for the first time in weeks. Marcus, she said quietly, just as he was beginning to drift off, thank you. This act of accommodation demonstrates a level of interspecies empathy that I had not expected to encounter. Your willingness to adapt to my biological needs while maintaining professional boundaries is remarkable. You're welcome, Marcus replied. We're partners in this research. Partners help each other out. Yes, Sarah agreed, her voice growing drowsy. Partners. As Marcus finally fell asleep, wrapped in the gentle embrace of his alien roommate, he realized that their research into interspecies psychology was becoming far more hands-on than he'd ever expected. But for the first time since arriving at Harmony Point, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The next morning brought new challenges and discoveries, but also a deeper understanding between two very different beings, who were learning that sometimes the best scientific breakthroughs came from the simplest acts of trust and cooperation. The growing connection 3 weeks into their unusual sleeping arrangement, Marcus had settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Each evening, he would settle onto Sarah's sleeping pad while she positioned herself behind him, her long arms wrapping around his smaller frame. What had initially felt awkward and clinical had gradually become comfortable, even comforting. He found himself sleeping better than he had in years, and Sarah's improvement was even more dramatic. The change in her was remarkable. Her pale skin had regained its subtle luminescence, her movements were more fluid and confident, and her work performance had improved significantly. More importantly to Marcus, she had begun to open up in ways that went beyond their professional collaboration. Your body temperature fluctuates more than I expected, Sarah observed one morning as they prepared breakfast together. During your sleep cycles, it rises and falls in patterns that seem to correlate with your dream states. Thylorians maintain much more stable temperatures during rest. Humans are pretty variable that way, Marcus agreed, adding synthesized protein to his meal prep unit. We're not as physiologically controlled as your species. Does it bother you? On the contrary, Sarah said, and Marcus caught something in her tone that was softer than her usual scientific detachment. The variability is interesting. Sometimes your temperature drops and you move closer to me seeking warmth. Other times you grow warm and relax completely. These responses seem to indicate a level of trust and comfort that my research suggests is significant among humans. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I hope I'm not making you uncomfortable by unconsciously cuddling up to you. Cuddling. Sarah repeated the word thoughtfully. Another human term I am learning to understand. No, your unconscious contact-seeking behavior does not cause discomfort. If anything, it enhances the effectiveness of our comfort bonding. When you move closer to me in your sleep, my own stress levels decrease further. Their conversations had become longer and more personal over the weeks. Marcus learned that Sarah came from a military family and had been expected to follow a rigid career path focused entirely on duty and achievement. Her assignment to Harmony Point was actually a form of exile. She had questioned certain military policies and had been sent to study primitive species. As a form of professional punishment, my superiors believed that studying humans would teach me humility, Sarah admitted one evening as they worked side by side on their respective research projects. They intended for me to return with a greater appreciation for Thylorian superiority and order. And instead, Marcus prompted, instead, I am learning that there are different forms of strength. Thylorian society values logical control and predictable outcomes, but humans seem to find strength in adaptability, in emotional connections, in the willingness to embrace uncertainty. These are not inferior traits, they are simply different approaches to survival and growth. Marcus looked up from his data analysis. That sounds like it might cause problems when you go back home. Sarah was quiet for a moment, her pale eyes focused on something beyond the viewport. Yes, it might. Their professional collaboration had evolved as well. What had begun as separate research projects was becoming a joint study on interspecies psychological compatibility. Their unusual living arrangement provided unique data on how different species could adapt to and support each other's biological and emotional needs. We should document this, Marcus said one afternoon as he reviewed their latest findings. The comfort bonding arrangement we've developed could be valuable for future human Thylorian cooperative missions. You're sleeping better, I'm sleeping better, and we've both shown improved cognitive performance and reduced stress markers. You wish to publish our personal sleeping arrangements? Sarah asked, raising one elegant eyebrow. The scientific aspects. Yes, the physiological benefits, the psychological adaptations, the social implications. We've accidentally created the perfect case study for interspecies cooperation. Sarah considered this. There would be significant interest in such research. Both our peoples struggle with interspecies cooperation on long-term missions. If we could demonstrate that physical comfort bonding between different species is not only possible but beneficial, it could change how we approach joint missions, shared facilities, even diplomatic relations. Marcus finished. They began formally documenting their experiences, carefully recording physiological data, psychological assessments, and behavioral observations. The work was fascinating, but it also meant that their private arrangement was becoming more public knowledge. The reaction from their colleagues was mixed. Dr. Sarah Kim, a human psychologist working on the station, was intensely curious about their findings. You're getting better sleep, reduced anxiety, and improved cognitive function just from nighttime. Physical contact with an alien? Marcus, do you realize how significant this could be for deep space missions? However, not everyone was supportive. Commander Patricia Walsh, the human administrator for their research division, called Marcus into her office after their preliminary report was circulated. Dr. Chen, she said, her expression stern, I need to ask you directly, is your relationship with Research Commander Veltice purely professional? Marcus felt his face flush. Yes, ma'am. We're conducting legitimate scientific research on interspecies compatibility. The physical contact is purely therapeutic, based on Thylorian biological requirements. I see. And you don't find it inappropriate to be sleeping in such close physical contact with an alien? I find it scientifically valuable and personally comfortable, Marcus replied carefully. Commander Veltice requires physical contact for proper rest cycles. I'm providing the contact. In return, I'm gathering unprecedented data on interspecies cooperation. I don't see anything inappropriate about two professionals solving a biological compatibility problem. Commander Walsh studied him for a long moment. Dr. Chen, I want to be clear about something. There are people on this station who view your arrangement with suspicion. Some think you're conducting unethical research using yourself as a test subject. Others think you're engaging in inappropriate relations with an alien. I need to know that you're maintaining proper professional boundaries. We are, Marcus said firmly. Our research is solid, our methodology is sound, and our results are significant. The fact that some people find interspecies cooperation uncomfortable doesn't make our work invalid. All right, Commander Walsh said, but I want regular reports on your research, and I want to see all your data. If there's any indication that this arrangement is affecting your professional judgment or creating diplomatic complications, it ends immediately. Meanwhile, Zara was facing her own challenges. Marcus discovered this when he returned to their quarters one evening to find her in animated conversation with another Thylorian via holographic communication. The other alien, tall and imposing with more angular features than Zara, was speaking in rapid Thylorian that the room's translation system couldn't keep up with. When the call ended, Zara stood motionless for several minutes, staring out the viewport at the stars. Problems? Marcus asked gently. Military command is not pleased with my research focus, Zara said without turning around. They expected me to study human weaknesses and psychological vulnerabilities. Instead, I am documenting human adaptability and emotional intelligence as strengths. This was not the intended outcome of my assignment. What are they going to do? Zara finally turned to face him, and Marcus could see tension in her normally composed features. They are sending an observer. Senior military researcher Keth Morvan will arrive next week to evaluate my work and determine whether my research is serving appropriate Thylorian interests. That doesn't sound good. It is not. Keth Morvan is known for his rigid adherence to traditional Thylorian values. He views other species as inherently inferior and considers close contact with aliens to be contaminating. If he determines that my research has been compromised by excessive emotional involvement with humans, he will end my assignment and likely have me reassigned to a punishment detail. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. Would that mean you'd have to stop our research? Yes, and it would mean no more comfort bonding. I would be required to maintain strict separation from human contact. That night, their usual sleeping arrangement felt different. Marcus was acutely aware that their time together might be limited, and he could feel tension in Zara's normally relaxed form. She held him closer than usual, and he could sense her distress, even though she hadn't spoken about it directly. Zara, he said quietly in the darkness. What is it, Marcus? Are you going to be okay? I mean, if this observer decides to end your assignment? She was silent for so long that he thought she might have fallen asleep. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I do not wish to return to the rigid isolation of traditional Thylorian military service. These weeks with you have shown me possibilities I had never considered. The comfort bonding we share, the intellectual collaboration, the simple pleasure of daily companionship. These are not valued in my society, but I have come to treasure them. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. I don't want to lose our partnership either, both the professional work and the personal connection. Personal connection, Zara repeated. Yes, that is accurate. You have become important to me in ways that extend beyond our research collaboration. Is this friendship the human emotional bond that your species values so highly? I think it might be something even more than friendship, Marcus admitted. I care about you, Zara, not just as a research partner or even as a friend. I care about your well-being, your happiness, your future. I want you to be able to pursue the research that interests you and live in a way that makes you fulfilled. Zara's arms tightened around him. Among my people, such emotional attachments are considered weaknesses that compromise logical judgment. But with you, I feel stronger, more capable, more confident in my abilities. Your presence enhances my performance rather than detracting from it. Maybe that's something worth documenting too, Marcus suggested. Not just the physiological benefits of comfort bonding, but the psychological and emotional benefits of interspecies friendship. Or whatever this is we have, whatever this is. Zara agreed softly. Senior military researcher Keth Morvan arrived exactly on schedule, bringing with him an atmosphere of cold disapproval that seemed to lower the temperature in every room he entered. He was even taller than Zara, with skin that appeared almost white rather than her subtle blue-tinged pale complexion. His features were sharp and angular, and his pale eyes seemed to catalog and dismiss everything they saw. Marcus was required to present their research findings to a review board that included Morvan, Commander Walsh, and several other senior staff members from both human and alien departments. He had spent days preparing his presentation, organizing their data into the most professional and scientific format possible. Our research demonstrates significant physiological and psychological benefits from interspecies comfort bonding, Marcus began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Thylorian subjects showed improved sleep quality, reduced stress markers, and enhanced cognitive performance when provided with appropriate physical contact. During rest cycles, human subjects experienced similar benefits, suggesting that such arrangements could be valuable for long-term interspecies missions. Morvan's expression remained coldly neutral throughout the presentation, but Marcus could see disapproval in his pale eyes. When the formal presentation concluded, the Thylorian military researcher stood to address the board. While Dr. Chen's data collection appears thorough, Morvan said in perfect, unaccented English, I must question the appropriateness of his research methodology. Using oneself as a test subject in intimate physical contact with an alien subject raises serious questions about scientific objectivity and professional boundaries. The contact is therapeutic, not intimate, Marcus replied carefully. It addresses a specific biological need of the Thylorian species, while providing valuable data on interspecies cooperation. You sleep every night wrapped in the arms of a Thylorian warrior, Morvan stated bluntly. You call this professional distance. I call it solving a compatibility problem that allowed us to conduct groundbreaking research. Marcus answered, the physical contact is necessary for Commander Veltice to achieve proper rest. I provided that contact while maintaining appropriate boundaries and documenting the results. Our findings could benefit future interspecies cooperation. Morvan turned to address Zara directly, speaking in rapid Thylorian. Marcus watched as Zara's expression became increasingly controlled and neutral. Her responses were brief and formal, and Marcus could see her withdrawing into the rigid military bearing he hadn't seen since their first meeting. After what felt like hours of discussion, the review board concluded their session without announcing a decision. Marcus was dismissed and told that he would be informed of any changes to his assignment status. That evening, Zara was quiet and distant. She went through her usual routines with mechanical precision, but the warmth and openness that had developed between them seemed to have disappeared. What did Morvan say to you? Marcus asked as they prepared for sleep. He reminded me of my duties as a Thylorian military researcher, Zara replied formally. He expressed concern that my objectivity has been compromised by excessive emotional involvement with human subjects. And you told him? I told him that my research has been conducted according to proper scientific protocols, and that my findings are valid, regardless of my personal feelings about the subjects involved. Marcus felt relief, but also noticed something important. Personal feelings. Zara looked at him directly for the first time that evening. Yes, Marcus, personal feelings. I have developed what humans would call emotional attachment to you. This attachment does not invalidate our research, but it does represent a significant departure from traditional Thylorian behavior. Is that going to cause problems for you? Possibly. Morvan believes that emotional attachments to alien species represent a form of contamination that compromises a Thylorian's ability to serve the Empire effectively. He has recommended that I be transferred to a different assignment with no interspecies contact. Marcus felt his heart sink, and the final decision will be made by military command within the next few days. Until then, I am to continue my current assignment, but avoid any activities that might further compromise my objectivity. That night, they maintained their usual physical arrangement, but something had changed. Zara held him carefully, almost formally, and Marcus could feel the emotional distance she was trying to maintain. Zara, he said softly in the darkness. Yes? Whatever happens with the military review, I want you to know that these weeks have been the most meaningful of my life, not just professionally, but personally. You've taught me so much about cooperation, about trust, about seeing beyond surface differences to understand what really matters. You have taught me equally valuable lessons. Zara replied. You have shown me that emotional connections can be sources of strength rather than weakness, that vulnerability can lead to deeper understanding, that there are many ways to be strong and many ways to serve a greater purpose. If they transfer you, will I ever see you again? Zara was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. Thylorian military assignments can last 4 years or decades, and if Morvan's recommendations are accepted, I will likely be assigned to duties that have no contact with alien species. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. The thought of losing Zara, as a research partner, as a friend, as whatever they were becoming, was almost unbearable. There might be another option, he said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. What do you mean? What if our research was so valuable, so significant, that both our governments wanted to continue it? What if we could demonstrate that our work was too important to interrupt? Marcus spent the next 2 days working frantically, compiling their research into the most comprehensive and compelling report he had ever written. He documented not just their findings on comfort bonding and interspecies cooperation, but the broader implications for diplomacy, long-term space missions, and peaceful coexistence between different species. The report went to every senior official on the station, to Earth Command, and to the Thylorian Military Research Division. Marcus argued that their work represented a breakthrough in interspecies relations that could benefit both civilizations for generations to come. The response was swift and surprising. Commander Walsh called Marcus into her office with a message from Earth Command. At the same time, Zara received a communication from Thylorian Military Command. Dr. Chen, Commander Walsh began, your research has attracted significant attention at the highest levels of Earth's scientific and diplomatic communities. The Department of Interspecies Relations wants to expand your study into a full-scale research program. They're offering you a promotion, a substantial budget increase, and the opportunity to lead a new department focused on interspecies psychological cooperation. Marcus felt his heart racing. And Commander Veltais, that's the interesting part. Thylorian Military Command has apparently decided that her research is too valuable to interrupt. They're extending her assignment indefinitely and giving her authorization to continue her current research methods. Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. You mean we can continue working together? More than that, you're being asked to establish the protocols for interspecies cooperation that could be used throughout human and Thylorian space. Your comfort bonding research is being classified as strategically important to both civilizations. That evening, Marcus found Zara standing at their viewport, looking out at the stars with an expression he couldn't read. I heard the news, he said, joining her at the window. Yes, she replied. It seems our personal arrangement has become a matter of intergalactic significance. Are you happy about it? Zara turned to look at him, and for the first time in days, he saw warmth in her pale eyes. I am pleased that our research will continue, and I am pleased that our partnership will continue as well. Just our partnership? A small smile touched Zara's lips, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her since Morvan's arrival. Our partnership, our friendship, and whatever else this connection between us becomes. I have learned that some bonds are worth fighting for, even if they challenge traditional expectations. That night, as they settled into their usual sleeping arrangement, Marcus felt a sense of completion that went beyond successful research or career advancement. In Zara's arms, surrounded by her warmth and strength, he realized that they had discovered something more valuable than scientific data. They had discovered that connection, trust, and mutual care could bridge any gap between different worlds, different species.